There are stories the stage can't tell. There are aches that camera lights cannot capture. And there are people who break quietly, not because they lack strength, but because the world doesn't pause long enough to notice they're in pain. Between 2019 and 2020, the name Jennie Kim, a celebrated member of Blackpink, was whispered, debated, and in some corners, ridiculed. She's lazy. She's not trying. She should leave the group. The comments rolled in like a wave that didn't care who it drowned. Clips of her performances were scrutinized frame by frame. Fans who once screamed her name started questioning her place in the group. Some even called for her removal. And all the while, not once did the world stop to ask, is she okay? No one knew, or perhaps no one wanted to know, that behind every stage performance during that time, Jennie was carrying an invisible weight, a severe injury in both ankles. Not one. Both. The very joints that dancers rely on to twist, jump, pivot, they were compromised. Each step became a whisper of agony. Every beat she hit in choreography was an act of defiance against her own body. But she showed up anyway. She smiled. She twirled. She sparkled. Because when millions of people are watching, the show must go on. And it did. Even when her legs were begging her to stop. But pain has a way of bleeding through performance, no matter how flawless the makeup, how bright the smile. And because no one could see her wounds, they labeled her as lazy. Unprofessional. Disappointing. So one day, Jennie appeared on a live stream, with crutches. It wasn't to make excuses. It wasn't to lash out at her critics. It wasn't even to explain. It was to reassure the people who still cared. To say gently, I'm sorry for making you worry. I'm getting treatment and I'll come back stronger. Behind her mascara were eyes slightly swollen with exhaustion, just a shade redder than usual. Her voice trembled not from weakness but from a quiet strength trying its best not to collapse. She didn't talk about the nights spent icing her legs just to fall asleep. She didn't talk about how her team begged her to rest. She didn't mention the bruises, the swelling, the fear. Instead, she chose kindness. She offered a soft promise. She comforted others, even when she desperately needed comforting herself. And still, the world kept spinning with its speculations. As she quietly recovered, the internet buzzed with rumors of a new generation of Warang, an elite crop of dazzling trainees supposedly being groomed to replace senior idols. Among fan forums and gossip sites, Jennie's name floated like a ghost. People said she was being phased out. That Blackpink was ready to upgrade. Few realized that at that very moment, Jennie was lying in a hospital bed, still refusing to give up. Still asking her doctors how soon she could dance again, not if. She never once considered quitting. But what pierced deeper than the injury was the abandonment. The betrayal of fans who once called her their queen. The silence of supporters when she needed grace the most. The headlines that judged her form without ever questioning her condition. That kind of pain leaves no scar on the skin, but it etches into the soul. Yet somehow, she returned. Jennie stepped back onto the stage, radiant, fierce, and more powerful than before. Her movements sharper, her expressions richer, her energy electric. People called it a comeback. But they didn't know the full story. They didn't know that behind every move was a battle she had already fought and won, with herself. The girl who was once called lazy had proven something no stage performance could capture: resilience. Not the kind that screams. The kind that endures. Silently. Relentlessly. She didn't need to shout back at her critics. She simply kept showing up, injured, misunderstood, but unbroken. Because Jennie Kim didn't just return as an idol. She returned as a testament to what it means to rise. To choose grace over revenge. To dance when your body says no. To smile when your heart is breaking. To keep walking when the world gives up on you. And that is not lazy. That is legendary. Today, people admire her stage presence, her fashion, her vocals, her confidence. But beneath the glitz and gloss lies a human being who once limped her way through rehearsals, wiped away tears before camera roll, and whispered apologies she never owed. She's not the only one. Idols are not machines. They're not invincible. They're not perfect. They bleed. They break. They have limits. And sometimes, they fall behind. Not because they're weak, but because they've given everything, quietly, and often without recognition. So the next time you notice your favorite idol moving slower, missing a beat, or not shining as brightly, remember this. Maybe they're just trying to keep going. Maybe every step is a silent scream. Maybe, like Jennie once did, they're dancing through pain. Sparkles, and in those moments, what they need most is not your judgment, but your understanding. Because sometimes, the bravest thing an artist can do is keep going, even when it hurts. A year that passed like a storm, yet left behind a silence louder than thunder. For many, it was a calendar they'd rather erase. But for her, Jennie, it became a chapter that branded her, not with glory, but with fire. Not the kind that warms. The kind that scorches. That year, the world forgot to see her as a person. They remembered only the headlines. Not the girl behind them. It started with the dating rumors, no, the dating news. In a world where love is supposed to be celebrated, hers was dissected like a scandal. There were no congratulatory banners.
No applause. Just a blinding storm of headline, #8.
Fans argued.
Strangère moquette.
Memes circulated like wildfire. Some laughed. Some spat venom. Few paused to wonder, was she okay? They said she betrayed the image they had of her. As if she ever signed a contract promising to stay single for the comfort of strangers. As if falling in love was a crime punishable by public stoning, not with rocks, but with words sharp enough to cut skin deep. But the storm didn't end there. Jennie's next chapter came not with redemption, but more judgment, her acting debut. A moment she'd prepared for, with quiet discipline, with trembling hope. She stepped into a new world, not as the superstar on stage, but as a beginner, daring to grow. Yet the world refused her that grace. The show was dissected. Her performance ridiculed. Articles painted her as awkward. Social media buzzed with sarcasm. Inappropriate. Unfit. Cringe. Some even questioned why she was cast at all, as if success in one field meant she wasn't allowed to dream in another. No one asked how it felt to be reduced to sound bites. To be told again and again, you're not good enough, not because of your talent, but because people decided you never had a right to try in the first place. The scenes she filmed were re-watched not for their artistic merit, but for ammunition. Screenshots were shared, misinterpreted, twisted until what was on screen bore no resemblance to her intent. It wasn't just local media. International blogs joined in, some with snark, others with fake concern. But the damage was global. And as the headlines screamed, the crowd watched, not as supporters, but spectators waiting for her to trip. But here's the thing no one ever saw, or cared to see. No one noticed the lights in her practice room burning at 3 a.m. No one saw her curled up in a studio chair, memorizing lines until her voice cracked. No one heard her heart break when she read the comments. Not once. Not twice. But every single day. Because the comments weren't just criticism. They were character assassinations. And yet, through it all, she never responded with anger. She stayed silent. Not because she had nothing to say, but because she learned that sometimes, silence is not weakness.
It's survival.
They said she looked cold in public. Too quiet. Too detached. But maybe, just maybe, she wasn't distant. Maybe she was protecting what little of herself she had left. Because when everyone thinks they own you, your face, your feelings, your story, what's left to call your own? People forget that fame doesn't immunize you from pain. That you can be a global icon and still wake up feeling unlovable. That the cheers from millions don't always drown out the doubts screaming inside your head. Jennie once said, in a quiet interview few bothered to replay, "I'm not perfect. But I try my best every single day." And that raw honesty, was what made her human. She wasn't trying to prove she was flawless. She was proving she could survive. Because 2021 wasn't just the year she was hated. It was the year she chose not to disappear. Instead of folding under the pressure, she kept moving. Quietly. Boldly. Day by day.
Step by step.
Not to reclaim a crown, but to reclaim herself. The spotlight may have faded. But her inner light? It burned hotter than ever. A fire no critic could extinguish. Because true strength isn't measured in comeback stages. It's measured in how many times you rise, even when no one's watching. It's in the dignity of walking through hell without throwing stones back at those who lit the fire. And Jennie did just that. She walked through ridicule and came out not with vengeance, but resilience. She stopped needing validation from strangers and started finding healing in the quiet spaces of her own soul. Those who once shouted the loudest have gone quiet now. And maybe, just maybe, some of them are starting to understand.
Because when the dust settle, and the hype fade, what is left behind isn't the headline. It's the scar. The silence. The strength.
Jennie's story isn't one of tragedy. It's one of transformation. She became not just a singer, or a style icon, or an actress, but a mirror for every person who's ever been misunderstood, misjudged, mislabeled. She became proof that you can be broken and still bloom. So if you were one of those who doubted her, ask yourself this. Did you ever try to see the girl behind the image?
The human behind the headline? The hat behind the hurt?
And if you never did, it's not too late to start now. Because stories like Jennie's aren't just about her. They're about us. About how we choose to see others. How we react when they stumble. How we love, or fail to love, when it's no longer convenient. 2021 was the year Jennie fell, but also the year she found her footing. The year she cried, but also the year she rose. The year she was torn down, but also the year she began building herself back up. Not for applause.
Not for revenge.
But for peace. And if that's not power, then what is?